You're listening to Robyn Rocket Zoom Zoom. I'm Robyn Rocket and I'm chatting to capital K. Robyn Rocket Zoom.
I was stuck in suburbia playing in these bands. I was very fortunate. A friend basically said, "You're going to move to London with me and you're going to come and move to London." So I actually moved into London proper. And when I moved to London proper, I started making my first album. And that's when everything changed. I was using an Atari computer and a sampler with 8 meg of RAM in it, and I had one keyboard. A bandmate of mine had access to this demo studio, and it was a slightly defunct studio from the 80s. I had lots of half-broken equipment.
How did you know how to use a studio?
When I was in suburbia, my bandmate, his dad ran a recording studio. So the thing is, from like 15, 16 years old, we were hanging out in recording studios. So I was learning studios just because we were just always hanging out in them. A housemate at the time was passing demos on my behalf to people because they were much more sociable than I was. I was really not able to talk to people in public or anything. The cassette tape got handed to Mike Paradinas at Planet Mu at a gig we were at. And he listened to it, and then about 4 days later, he phoned me up and offered me a record deal. And then suddenly I got signed, and with that came a whole heap of expectation, which I kind of really embraced. And I was just really like into experimenting and finding interesting stuff. But then I was suddenly tied in with this thing where I was with a proper record label, and there was people, and there was publishers, and there was managers, and I think I was kind of making kind of like 180 degree turns and just suddenly going into a completely different style of music, and then I had that funny thing where people you start getting people going, "Yes, we decided that we think you should become more of a performer, and we don't think you perform enough on stage, can you stop using so much equipment? Can you get someone else to do the equipment? And can you just come to the front and just concentrate on being a front person?" And I started sort of trying to do this very sort of like pop kind of thing. And then it completely alienated the audience that I'd built up as a sort of, the guy behind a bank of equipment. So I had a bit of a funny moment where I sort of like, I was having a lot of fun. I started dressing up in weird clothes and being more performative, and then I did an album, and which was a bit of a bonkers album, I admit, but it had a lot of really interesting music on it, and I think it kind of pretty much destroyed the entire audience I had. After that, I got dropped by basically my manager dropped me, my label dropped me, the publisher dropped me. I just got left to my own devices, and then I just sort of kept making music, and that's when I got liberated, and then just went back to just doing what I do. The good thing is when I got some money for music, I actually spent most of the money on buying gear. Around the same time as all the deals ended and everything, I also then became homeless, so I then started squatting. So I then got in with a group of friends. We became very kind of like involved in squatting in London, and then I started setting up recording studios in the squats, and then people just knew I could record them, so I started helping to record, so I was just doing very sort of basic recording in squat studios, so the studio thing was always going on the side, and then as was the idea of helping other people produce stuff. Alexi sent me a message saying, "Oh, I found this building," and I said, "Oh, I've just literally put everything in storage, and I've just come out of the studio." I was like, I can't do another studio now. I need a bit of time off. So I think about a year later, he was still messaging me, and TRC was still available, and still no one had built a studio. So after a year, I was like, okay. But also, I needed that year gap to find some extra gear because I didn't have the right console. So I knew I wanted to build another studio, but I had to find the right stuff, which is quite hard because you need to find the right gear that's going to sound good, and a lot of it's like way too expensive, and the price of stuff vintage has really got too much,